One last thing before we wrap things up for today. That was the beginning of SmackDown, and then that was, whether it was Vince's goodbye forever, it was certainly his goodbye for the night. He was gone. And then there was a few hours of SmackDown, and then the main event, I know you didn't watch it, was Riddle versus Roman Reigns. Actually, a really good match. Reigns.
But more importantly was the business afterwards.
That's right. Roman Reigns wins, and him and the Usos and Heyman get in the ring, and they do a promo, and he's beating everyone, and there's nothing else going on. And then the Lesnar music hits. Brock Lesnar is back.
And the babies go in the air. And as well as Sable's fun bags, right up in the air.
They move.
No, here's and again, also, we didn't even mention this earlier in this marathon podcast that you people have just suffered through, is another injured lip. Randy Orton is gone, apparently, now they're saying, for the rest of the year for a back issue, I think. I'm not sure, but the point is he's not. That's where Riddle's bro has been, is also injured. So there's another Orton and Cody, which could have been probably the next step for Cody after Seth Franklin Rollins, because the two best workers probably on the roster at that point. But now Orton's out too, so what are they going to do for SummerSlam? They've already moved Money in the Bank from a stadium to an arena. I'm sure they don't want to do the same thing for SummerSlam, so naturally they sent up the Brock signal. And there's nothing wrong with that. Here you've got a rematch of the biggest money WrestleMania match that they could put together, and that they did. But now the problem becomes, well, if Brock and Roman, the rematch is at SummerSlam, which that is the biggest money match they can put together, then what's the Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, and next year's WrestleMania for that matter by this point? They keep having to rehab and revamp and rematch the same handful of guys. And it's great that, Brock sooner or later is going to enter the Dick the Bruiser era where, bless him, he'd been one of the biggest draws in the history of the business, but my God, he couldn't lift a foot off the ground. I'm not saying that's going to be in the next 6 months or so, but where are the new mega box office attractions coming from if they have to go back to this so quickly? And who else is a thing to go back to? Let's say that Orton's back by the end of the year and Cody's back by the end of the year. Add them to Reigns and Lesnar, but who else?
That's part of the problem. And of course, the freak injury to Cody was something no one expected. But Cody is the guy who's gotten the biggest push in 2022, and it's worked. And he's been the right guy. And now he's out. He got that push. No one else got anything close to a push. Who got a push? Madcap Moss? Turning babyface on Baron Corbin? And the rosters already seem really thin. And then you go look at NXT, and there's a Braun Breaker, and there's a Cameron Grimes, who would never probably be used right by Vince McMahon. But there's very few guys there that look like they're ready to be elevated. We see who's out there in the free agent pool. This is a bad situation right now in terms of talent, and certainly main event talent in WWE. They've got no one that they've tried to elevate. I mean, Drew McIntyre they tried, and now he's in a mid-card feud with Sheamus and his friends.
Well, a lot of that got derailed by the empty arena era, and then they just backed up and gave up on it. But at the same time, while he's a wonderful athlete and looks great, got the size, he can talk, blah, blah, blah. Does anybody see Drew McIntyre as the next Brock Lesnar, Steve Austin, Hulk Hogan? Braun Breaker may be that, but he's not going to be that for a couple of years because you just have to get more experience to be able to take care of yourself like that. So they're in as you said, it's a sad, sad situation, and it's getting more and more absurd.
I mean, even the AEW guys that they would potentially want, I think a lot of those guys are now locked up to contracts for another couple of years. There is not a Jericho you can throw money at right now, or a Moxley, someone you can come in there and try to plop into a main event position. They don't have too many guys, and they've done such a horrible job with talent development on TV, on the main roster, that no one cares about most of the people there. Other than the most hardcore fans who don't care if those wrestlers win or lose, they're still going to buy the t-shirt.
Well, and also, remember when we went down the roster and this was before the mass firings of the last year, but there was 200 and something talents at one point between NXT and Raw and SmackDown, if you want to split the rosters. And we picked out about maybe 50 that I'd really like to have if I was operating a wrestling company. And then they proceeded to fire about 10 of those right off. And I think another 5 or 10 have probably meandered off since then. But still, by the numbers, there ought to be more in their system than what we're seeing both on their main roster and on their developmental program. Apparently, none of them are any better than what we're looking at, though, or elsewise they'd be showing us them. So I don't know.
Every week, it's that Memphis episode where the weather was bad and there was no one there.
Yeah.
Like every week, it's the same 8 people spread over 3 hours doing the same things over and over.
And I don't recall it being in the early Attitude Era, 96-ish, 97-ish, whatever the case. We had a roster of 20-something, not even 20 guys on each side, not even 20 babyface and 20 heels, and still had more variety on a 2-hour television program. I don't understand.
Well, now Brock Lesnar is back in the mix. Once again, last man standing match at SummerSlam against Roman Reigns. Reminder, Roman Reigns won the last match. And now they're going to have a last man standing match before both guys, I guess, go away for a while, right? Roman Reigns is about to...
Well, yeah, at least we won't be able to call the finish because it's highly likely both of them might take off after this thing. Maybe Vince can be the referee. That'll be some type of legal settlement. Vince gets to referee and pick the last man standing in his company.